Hello, everybody. This is Christina Fisanick broadcasting live from Weelunk, West Virginia. And today, my friend Laura and I have decided that we should bring a little levity to the lives of our readers and our audience. And, things are kind of rough right now. And we thought that maybe a little bit of humor would help get you through your day today. And at least have a pause from everything that's happening in the world right now. So, Laura, how are you today?
I am all right. I had something in my eye for 2 days, but that has passed. And it's amazing how when you have something in your eye, all you can think about is the time when you didn't have something in your eye. So I feel like I've been reborn today. Going back to what Christina said a minute ago, we came up with this program, this idea for a levity lunch. When we were all facing quarantine. Quarantine is maddening and COVID is scary and we're all looking at the same walls, and I love my family, but they are everywhere. They are everywhere. And I have a chair up against the door right now so they don't come in, so they can't barge in. And so humor would have been great then. But then, in this past week, things have been difficult. They've been painful, and we wondered if it was really appropriate to have a humorous lunch. But then I happened upon this quote on a writer friend's Facebook page by Maya Angelou, and she said, "Laugh as much as possible, always laugh. It's the sweetest thing one can do for oneself and one's fellow human beings." And then I opened the cabinet this morning and I noticed my Irma Bombeck mug that I got at the Irma Bombeck Humor Conference. And she said, when humor goes, there goes civilization. So the pain around us is it's deep and it's real and it's agonizing. But it's important to consider joy when we can. And so I hope that Christina and I can offer you a little bit today. So with that said, we're going to open with a piece that might actually speak to your pets more than it does to you. I don't know. I know there's a lot of critters in my yard, and some of the residents of my house, feline more than human and canine, are really, really into these critters. So Christina and I together will be reading The Game of Cat. So pay attention and maybe invite one of your furry friends to listen, because we're going to give you the directions and how to play the game. The Game of Cat. The objective: to kill as much backyard wildlife as possible in 24 hours. The first player to acquire 100 points worth of critter carcass wins.
You will need some equipment. With any game of strategy, you will first and foremost need your wits and cunning. Players will rely heavily on their instincts, night vision, God-given stealth, and predatory drive. Particularly overweight players may find themselves at a disadvantage when climbing trees or squeezing through fences. However, all body types can have fun playing the Game of Cat.
So when you're setting up, prepare for 24 hours of the best damn catting you've ever done. This is going to be an all-out throwback to your ancestors' saber-toothed tiger days. Get off your ass and out of that sunbeam. Stop batting that plastic fishing pole with the dangly neon feathers. It's go time. Tell yourself that you're a feline, damn it, and you're here to wipe clean the face of this backyard. Everything that crawls, flies, chirps, squeaks, reproduces, and breathes is yours for the taking. Show no mercy to the newborn. Leave none alive. The Game of Cat isn't for pussies.
So, gameplay begins when players are released into the backyard. Players will have 24 hours to acquire carcasses totaling 100 points. Players should manage their time appropriately. Players must make certain that each animal is sufficiently deceased. Carcasses should be displayed on the welcome mat. The player should remain seated until the human comes to the door to discover or step on the corpses. Presentation counts. Alternatively, players with a pet door should display carcasses on the bedspread or pillowcase. Players will announce their completion of gameplay with a series of yowling vocalizations. Vocalization should continue until the carcasses have been properly received and acknowledged by the humans.
Scoring. Each of the following animals, cats, is worth 10 points. Sparrow, mourning dove, goldfinch, robin nestling, we love those, hummingbird, snake, chipmunk, squirrel, mouse, baby rabbit, mole or vole. The game of cat does not distinguish between the two. Nobody knows the difference anyway. 20 points will be awarded for escaped pets, such as dwarf hamsters and cockatiels. At the end of gameplay, points are tallied, and the player with the highest number of points wins.
So, I do have a few questions since, I've never played the game of cat before. Are you certain the humans approve of this game?
Of course they approve. Humans find backyard wildlife quite distasteful. They can't stand the bouncy squirrels, and they despise the fluffy bunnies. In fact, your owners hang bird feeders to lure in the screeching songbirds just so you can wipe them out. It's all part of the human-cat rapport.
How am I supposed to catch all these animals in 24 hours?
Come on, you're a cat. This is what you do. And if you don't, we suggest that you think about your strategy. Talk to feral cats when they come to poop in the children's sandbox. Study the field of play in the days preceding the game. Note what times various species are active and when they rest at night. For example, you might choose to lurk beside chipmunk holes and wait for the babies to emerge so you can slaughter them as efficiently as possible.
Are there any points awarded for tormenting the animal before I kill it?
No.
But I really enjoy tormenting an animal before I kill it.
We know how much fun it is. We have a budgie in our corporate office for this very purpose when creativity runs dry. However, every moment you spend chewing on those baby bunnies' heads is time you could be using to stalk hyperactive ruby throats.
Well, since the onset of my diabetes, I haven't been as motivated as I used to be.
It's not our fault that you've been free feeding all these years. Gluttony is only permissible when it applies to the slaughter of curious rodents and tiny naked nest dwellers.
I don't have claws. Can I play the game anyway?
You are advised not to play the game of cat if your owners have declawed you. We at Parker Brothers agree that it's a barbaric custom. We believe you when you say you wouldn't have scratched the new baby, and that the tattered left side of the sofa happened in a moment of weakness and boredom. However, we strongly recommend that those without claws refrain from participating in the game of cat. Stick to chewing houseplants and knocking Hummel figurines off the mantle. Humans love that.
I feel a bit guilty for killing so much native wildlife, especially when, I have no intention of eating any of it.
Eating does not necessarily equal digesting. Players may choose to eat their kills and regurgitate them on the duvet cover. To that end, look for Parker Brothers' Yak Attack, the game of surprise.
What should I do if members of the Audubon Society show up during gameplay?
These guys are trouble. Should anyone bearing an Audubon Society mark on their clothing or vehicle appear during gameplay, abandon your target and hide under the nearest porch. Have fun, cats.
Thank you very much, Laura, for that incredibly amusing essay. It's always fun to read with you about these funny things together. I have an essay that I would like to read now. And this piece was published on Weelunk about, I think, a couple of years ago. And it's in my column called Postscripts from the Edgewood. And it's called I'll Take the Back End. And I hope that you enjoyed this as much as I did writing it. And this is true. This really happened. And those of you who are from Wheeling and who know Edgewood and Woodsdale will notice some things as I'm going through this. You'll see some landmarks. So during that first coveted week of spring that seemed like it would never arrive, my family and I fired up the gas grill to have a picnic on our deck. We washed away 2 seasons of crust from our glass table, pulled the chair cushions out of their storage box, and rolled out the sunsetter to block the blinding rays to which our winter-trained eyes had yet to adjust. While I prepared a salad and put the food on the grill to cook, my son and husband set the table. It seemed, in a way, unreal. After the punishing weather this winter wrought, we were almost too timid to truly enjoy this change. What if it snows again? It has snowed in the middle of May before, hasn't it? But we braved potential heartbreak and took our seats to munch on veggies grown in far-off lands while the burgers hissed and growled on the hot grill. The grill master was a wedding gift from my mother-in-law, and it has withstood nearly 9 years of spring thunderstorms, heavy winter snows, and punishing summer heat. I cooked on it every season, even clearing it of fall leaves before lighting the burners. It was not uncommon to find me dashing back in the house with a steaming plate of grilled vegetables a week after New Year's. Grilled food tastes better, and each bite reminds me of summer evenings and fun times. Just as we were passing around the salt for our sliced tomatoes, we heard a bang. Upon investigation, we discovered that the bottom of the grill had rusted out and fallen into greasy orange flakes onto the deck. Thankfully, the veggie burgers were done and the veggie dogs just about burned, so I turned off the grill. My favorite cooking tool outside of my Instant Pot. Later that night, I posted my dilemma on Facebook. What kind of grill should I buy? What's the best deal? Can anyone loan me a truck? The dread of hauling a grill home up onto the deck and assembling it overrode any desire I had for a shiny new outdoor appliance. Not long after, a neighbor messaged me that she had a grill for sale, a nice one. She was moving and did not want to take it with her. After pictures and money changed inboxes, I was set to pick it up. My neighbor lives just up the street in a cul-de-sac. In fact, if I leaned pretty far out over my front porch banister, I could almost see her house. I figured, well, the grill has wheels, so I'd just roll it on home. After her husband removed their back gate, they lifted the grill into the alley. Made entirely of stainless steel, this Gen Air was a silver behemoth. Even still, I figured I could manage to pull it down my street and park it in my yard. I waved goodbye to the neighbors and shouted, "This is the most West Virginian thing I've done this week, but it's only Sunday." I rode it down the alley to a hail of laughter. The alley's beaten and worn pavement made the grill hitch and yaw, but I am a stout woman like my Grammy, Lord rest her soul. So I made it work. Once I got it on the smooth blacktop, it took little effect to roll it around the corner. But that's really when the trouble started. Motorists were a bit surprised by an overtired woman in her Sunday morning flip-flops and loungewear pulling a large gas grill with an attached searing station down our tree-lined street. But they waved their polite Edgewood waves, and I continued on down Edgington Lane. At one point, a neighbor and her friendly pooch stopped to chat with me, and I suddenly became even more aware of the preposterousness of my undertaking. She encouraged me, though, as she always does, by suggesting that I make a bit of money by selling grilled treats to passers-by from my newly acquired machine. I blanched at the thought of the city ruining my business with all their laws and safety codes, so I passed on the idea and continued to roll down the street. By the time I arrived in front of my house, I realized with annoyance that someone had parked their car in front of the only spot with a curb, thereby blocking access to the sidewalk. I paused for a moment, raised my sunglasses, and realized that the offending vehicle belonged to me. I grunted and hefted the front end of the grill up over the curb and onto the sidewalk. With a few more shoves and pulls, I had her parked right in my front yard, which my husband was mowing. I tried a few times to wheel her out to the back deck and failed after my foot fell into a dip and I staggered butt-facing into the thorny red bushes in front of my house. I have wondered these past 9 years if the previous owners put those there for security purposes or as an excuse to not hang Christmas lights around the front porch. Though they be little, they are fierce. I caught my husband's attention over the roar of the mower. displayed the grill using game showgirl poses, clearly proud not only of my purchase, but that I was able to drag the whole mess down the street without running into anyone's car. He nodded, and I went inside for a cold drink and some me time. About an hour later, the mower quiet, I heard him call to me from the backyard. It was the moment I had been dreading. He wanted me to help him heft the fully assembled grill up the back steps and onto the deck. Although we have known each other for nearly 25 years, we do not work well together. In fact, well, you get the idea. I trudged through the kitchen and out the back door to see that he had built a ramp out of composite deck boards. Crafty, I thought. It's one of his strengths. The only problem was that one of the boards was half as long as the other and therefore would not go the distance from the bottom step up the deck landing. I grimaced inside, but put on my eager to help you face when he asked, "Which end do you want?" I laughed out loud because it reminded me of when our son was a baby and we would double team him. Usually I took the front end, boobs, hello, and he took the back end. This time I oh so generously chose the back end. He stood there atop the deck platform like a lion surveying his kingdom. I looked up at him in wonder because he had to realize that as a writer, I have nearly no upper body strength and a mild case of carpal tunnel. But on I pushed, first across the grass and then onto the makeshift ramps where my king grabbed the grill handle and pulled it up until we ran out of board. After a moment, I heard from somewhere above the grill's enormous hood, "I'll hold the grill, you hand me the board so I can put it down on the rest of the steps." By this time, the foreshadowing was as obvious as if Poe had written it himself. I knew it would not end well. I am slightly ashamed to admit that I hope to be the one without the scar and the Monday morning water cooler story to tell. I handed him the half board while holding on to the back end of the grill. Seconds later, I was in star-making pain as the composite deck board rocketed down from the top of the deck and into my right ankle. The obscenities I spewed forth into the quiet Sunday air were just enough to keep me from vomiting, and I was ever so grateful that the 3 Catholic nuns who lived next door were safely ensconced in church. I thought for certain that my bone was fractured. When I finally looked down, I saw that a chunk was missing from the front left of my ankle, and there was blood. My blood. I danced around the yard in pain as my son jumped off his bike to comfort me. "Oh, Mama, Mama, I'll beat up that board for you, Mama. That board is mean, Mama." And then he tried, out of both empathy and curiosity, to touch the fresh wound. And I screamed, "No!" And the red-bellied porch finch, whose nest resides above the frame of my sunsetter, chirped and flew back home, fearing the worst for her children, too. I apologized to my son and told him I appreciated his concern, and then limped my way around the side of the house to the front door. The grill remained stuck halfway up the deck, blocking my passage, part of it on the longboard and part of it hung by its wheels on the steps. My husband, sweating from exertion and the hot sun at last, sneered at me as I hobbled away, leaving him to find a solution to the grill on the stairs dilemma. Once inside, I found saline solution and Neosporin in the bathroom closet and nursed my wound gently. I reclined on the sofa with a baggie of ice cubes on my ankle and a pillow behind my back and waited. Sure enough, 2 episodes of Friends later, I heard my name being called again. I pretended I didn't hear. Then he sent my son in, which is the only thing I don't like about having a kid. "Dad needs your help again, Mama. I won't let that board hurt you this time," he said. I plodded my way through the dining room and then the kitchen as my son dashed out the front door and around to the back to watch round 2. I wanted to stop angrily, but my ankle throbbed at the thought. I opened the back door to see that my husband had taken the racks out and the lid off to lighten the load. "This time," I said, "I am taking the front end." A few good pushes later, and the grill, was up on the deck. For a moment, we thought it wouldn't fit through the gate, but after careful maneuvering, and I helped, it slid through the gate in all its disassembled finest, and that's where it sits today, askew, between the gate door and patio table. We shined up the exterior with carnauba wax and then left it to go inside. The pizza guy was ringing the doorbell, so we had to go. Maybe this weekend we will finish cleaning out the inside and put the grill back together, but something tells me our latest acquisition will sit in this spot until one of us decides we want to use it and rage cleans it. I hope it's before the snow flies. Although the new to us grill has lights in the hood, they won't do me much good if it's still sitting on the patio table when the days get shorter. My ankle is healing up nicely, though the scabbed over gash looks unsightly with my cute summer dresses and sandals. And all because I chose to take the back end.
I love that piece so much, Christina. When you say, thank goodness that I wasn't on camera, because when you say it was the most West Virginia thing ever, I hit my feet every time, and I did today too. It's
and it was only Sunday.
Backyard adventures, right?
Right, exactly. Well, what are you reading for us?
Well, actually, it's another timely piece. And, you know, if you know anything about my humor writing, you know that I write not just about animals, but I tend to write for animals. I don't know how this happened. When I was in graduate school getting my Master of Fine Arts, you're required at the end to write a thesis, which is a very long original work. And I was writing essays about animals. And then halfway through that year, I found that the animals started doing the speaking themselves, which is weird. And it's also not nonfiction. So I had quite a dilemma on my hands. So I ended up crafting a very unusual thesis in which a bunch of animals did the speaking. And I've sort of stuck to that, among other things. And this one is particularly timely because this morning, I came down and I went out on my deck. It was balmy, it was warm. And I have a lot of hosta in my backyard. And that's not a native species, and it's something I'm trying to change. But I've invested a lot of years and a lot of money into my hosta. And it's huge and it's beautiful. And it is like ringing the dinner bell for the white-tailed deer. Anybody who gardens knows this. I gave up on a vegetable garden a couple of years ago because I feel like I'd electrified too many animals with the fencing and the spikes. And I had a sprinkler that shot water, but I ended up shooting the mailman. So I still garden with perennials, but they're very tasty. And so the point of all this is that I came down this morning and one had been munched. They just I hate them. So it turns out that the white-tailed deer have thoughts of their own. So this piece is called Dimmeydale, White-tailed Deer, Herd number 17, Meeting Minutes. This is from the meeting of May 21st, 2020. Call to order. Fran called to order the regular meeting of the Dimmeydale White-tailed Deer Herd number 17 at 9 o'clock in the morning on May 21st, 2020 in the Howard Hill Woods, northeast of National Road in Weelunk, West Virginia. Roll call. Felix conducted a roll call. The following ruminants were present: Larry, Alice, Paula, Louise, Spike, Felix, Bob, Kevin, Fran, and Helen. Absent were Ginger, who was home with the fawns and couldn't get a babysitter, and Clark, who hasn't been seen since declaring he was hungry for the purple berries that grow on the far side of Interstate 70. Felix read the minutes from the last meeting. The minutes were approved as read. Open issues. Number 1. Fran began with the continuing matter of the human-deer relations in the backyard, which she said were deteriorating. She expressed her concern at a recent verbal tirade on May 13th, 2020, during which the female resident of the home directly addressed Fran from her porch. The human female peppered her rant with insulting names, including forest goats, yard cows, and antlered asshats, and demanded that all deer depart the property. Fran then recounted the points made in the human's tirade, which are: number one, the deer are eating all of the vegetation, including but not limited to the Oscar Schoff rue anemone, the Pere David blue corydalis, and the sweet summer love clematis. Number two, the deer have conducted rutting activities on the lawn in front of her elderly mother and young children. And three, the deer have been evacuating their bowels on her grass and her dogs have been rolling in it. The human went on to threaten the deer with various retaliatory weapons. These include a pellet gun, a super soaker, and a heavy application of deer repellent consisting of dried blood and putrescent egg solids. Fran asked the group if anyone could provide an explanation why this woman might be so enraged. Kevin noted the female human seemed unhealthily obsessed with her various perennial flowers, especially those with hoity-toity names, and let the record show that Kevin used air quotes. Kevin further stated he did not understand why humans would plant deer food in such an accessible place if they did not intend to offer it to the animals that had been in the yard for decades. Fran questioned whether the group might possibly be under a misapprehension about the purpose of the human perennial garden and whether it was not planted for the deer but for some other purpose altogether. Bob asked what other purpose said vegetation could possibly serve and demanded to know who the hell Oscar Schoff was anyway. Louise moved the herd monitor the plants that were eaten and note the subsequent human reaction. Kevin seconded. Motion carried. Bob suggested the human-deer relations might be improved if the deer exercised more restraint during the rut. He conceded that he and Ginger had indeed been spotted fornicating on the lawn in October, and that the woman's aging mother had appeared outside one morning to walk her Lhasa Apso as the mating ritual unfolded. He stated that, given the intensity of the season, he had been unable to muster any sense of shame or reservation and had been romancing his lady to the exclusion of all decency. Alice chimed in to say that Ginger had returned to the woods both pregnant and humiliated, and though she had achieved the goal of procreation, she had also wished aloud that Bob had secured a more appropriate location for the act. Larry noted that if Bob had not racked him in the eye during the previous day's sparring match, he might have been Ginger's choice for breeding and would have maintained at least a modicum of dignity. Bob told Larry that Larry should stop whining about his defeat and shut his pie hole. Paula moved that rutting activities be confined to the area behind the dugout on the Dimmeydale Little League field. Motion died for lack of a second, and no action was taken. The group engaged in a lengthy discussion about bathroom habits. Though Paula and Helen said they would consider pooping in the woods, Bob, Felix, and Kevin said they would continue pooping wherever they darn well pleased, and that it was a deer's God-given right to eat and defecate at the same time. Felix said if the human was dumb enough to love a pet that rolls in excrement, she should be prepared to wash said dog on a regular basis. Felix added that he didn't see any reason why the human couldn't just scoop up the deer poop, since scooping seemed to be a favorite human pastime, as indicated by the frequency with which the chore was undertaken. Helen moved, seconded by Paula, that the herd poop in the woods, and the group agreed to further discuss the issue again at the next meeting. Motion tabled. New business. Helen moved that, given the topics covered in open discussions, the herd shift its territory up the street to the Greenwood Cemetery, where they would be safer from vehicular traffic and unencumbered by the presence of an unstable gardener. Additionally, the food supply might increase with the abundance of flowery grave adornments clearly offered to the deer by mourners. Alice seconded the motion. Felix warned that the fox squirrels in the cemetery have a reputation for getting drunk and disorderly on fermented crab apples, and that it was a moot point because white-tailed deer herd number 18 had already claimed that territory. He argued further that moving was not in the herd's best interest, given the persistent rumor that the female human's partner had plans to install a sizable vegetable garden, specifically for the group to enjoy. Motion failed. Spike moved that, instead of attempting to make peace with the human female, the herd take an offensive approach. He suggested that the yard belonged to the deer and always had, and further moved that he be permitted to pilot an experimental campaign of annoyance in which the group would extend foraging by several hours a day, ramp up pooping efforts, and seek out any plants that smelled expensive or consumed a noticeable majority of the female's attention. Larry seconded the motion. The herd engaged in 21 minutes of debate, during which it was ultimately decided that the campaign would be approved on a provisionary basis. Motion carried. Spike stated that he was damn sick of the human-deer conflagration and that it was time the deer banded together to change the way things are done around here. He then moved that the herd consider unionizing. Bob seconded the motion. Louise countered that unionization might require heavy dues and reminded the group that none of them had any money at all. Paula suggested the herd retain an attorney. Alice suggested a representative from Marshall County Opossum Union number 42 be brought in for a Q&A session at the next meeting to give them a better idea of the unionization process, as well as the pros and cons. The herd agreed to table the issue until the next meeting. Motion tabled. Announcements. Larry reminded the group to start preparing for bow season in the fall. Alice asked Larry to explain bow season, and Larry said that during bow season, the humans mark the prettiest deer within the city limits by tying a red ribbon around their necks. He then advised the group to do its best to represent herd number 17 in the contest by filling out around the ribs as autumn approached, growing thick, smooth coats, and spending more time in the daylight hours so as to be seen and considered for the bows. Fran adjourned the meeting at 10:33 a.m. So that's what the deer are doing.
Hey, that was great. I like the idea that you were in any way, shape, or form like okay with the deer, because I don't have a garden in my yard because of the deer in this neighborhood. So good for you for being at least somewhat polite about them.
It's so hard because when you see one with a fawn, you go, oh, and then you come out the next morning and your plants are ruined, and it's an entirely different sentiment altogether. So I'm guilty of both cursing at them and cooing at them.
Did you see that? Someone said that they saw Travis on I-70. That's brutal.
That was rough. Poor guy.
So I think that we need to talk about the cool new writing contest sort of thing that we're doing in conjunction with the Ohio County Public Library, Lunch with Books, the Arts Commission. Anybody I'm forgetting?
I think that's it.
And and with the Festival of Books, the Ohio Valley Festival of Books. We are starting something really new and really exciting. We will be running a competition of something called Where I'm From Poems. This is a form of poetry that was created by this wonderful poet called George Lyon. And it really gets people to think about where they're from, but put it in a way that's filled with images and sounds and scenes, but in a poetic form. And today we're going to introduce our Where I'm From poems to you. You brought yours, right, Laura?
I brought mine.
Awesome. And then invite you. There will be an article coming out from the library and through Weelunk and some other sources that will invite you to submit your own Where I'm From poem. And so, Laura, do you want to read yours first, and then I'll come back on and read mine, and we'll let these wonderful people go for the day?
Absolutely. So when I was a kid, and still to this day, my family spent most of the summer at Piedmont Lake in a little cabin in the woods. And so I've sort of passed that tradition on to my children. And so it's an incredibly important place to me. And that was where I chose to focus on for the poem. So where I'm from. I am from the floodplain, from muddy banks and eastern hardwood forest, from the undulating flight of the red-bellied woodpecker and the spring cheep of the randy towhee. I am from walking sticks and hairy spiders, from water snakes and husky muskies. I am from the puddle of sun on the pontoon boat where Sunday naps become religion. I am from crankbaits and rooster tails and largemouth bass, from Spider-Man poles and treble hooks, and Daddy, I caught a fish, can I kiss it before we set it free? I am from hot dogs and corn on the cob, from picnics on the boat where the Oreos are gone before we've left the dock, from jump rocks and backflips, and test the depth before you dive. Do you want to end up paralyzed? I am from 12 months and 4 seasons, from spring peepers in April and yellow tomatoes in August, and November, the quiet month when the light is low. From trilliums and May-apples, magnificent beech trees, and poison ivy. I am from snowy solitude under a wolf moon, cracking ice, and stay close to the shore until it's been below freezing for 2 weeks. Then you can walk across the lake, but don't tell your mom. I am from golf carts and game bugs and yellow paint from the 70s, from dog after dog after dog, smelly and wet and full of joy and breath and fleas. I am from the pre-dawn stillness where my father sits on the dock, waiting for the solstice sunrise, from the Perseids and the Milky Way and a pair of heavenly dippers. Can you see them? I am from 4 generations, from rowboats, canoes, kayaks, and paddleboards, from my grandfather's beers and my mother's scrambled eggs and my children's ear infections. I am from the road's end, from a lake called Piedmont, where white moths beat their dusty wings on the screens every night, no matter where in the world I might be. Thank you.
Oh, I got chills. I really love that poem, and I think that since I'm about to read mine, it'll really showcase just how, even though this form of poem has some things that are in common with it, you make it your own by talking about really where you're from. So here's my Where I Am From poem. I grew up originally in Moundsville, but I moved to Weelunk in 2009, and I feel like I am from here. This is my place. I love Weelunk with all my heart, and I'm really happy to be here and to be part of this community, and hope that I'm always here. And so this is my Where I'm From poem. And I hope, anyway, you'll recognize some of the images that I use here. I am from the bottom of Chicken Neck Hill, where we bake our pizza in squares and pile fried fish high on white bread. I am from winding roads and rolling hills, where the symphony plays under firework skies. I am from lake shores and mud bogs, and having more than one pair of crick shoes for catching minnows and crawdads that my rich friends like to call crayfish. I am from Walter Reuther and Mother Jones, red bandanas and picket signs. I am from swinging axes and shoveling coal, from company stores and shotgun shacks. I am from lightning bugs signaling summer's arrival and streetlights telling me it's time to go home. I am from backyard fires and moonshine stills, burnt black marshmallows and cicada song. I am from the gateway to the west, where wagon trains lumbered along National Road and steamboats floated to New Orleans down the rambling Ohio. I am from the Fish Creek deal and going alone and too much coffee and not enough smokes. I am from tomatoes warm off their vines, secret ramp patches deep in the woods, and walnut-stained hands after the first hard frost. I am from hollers and valleys and old pickup trucks. I am from hillsides blazing with color on Sunday drives and porch sitting with neighbors in the nowhere of dusk. I am from hands that hurt and hands that heal, and I am stronger than pig iron forged into steel. And that's where I'm from. So we are hoping that you will join us in this quest to describe where we're from. Part of our connection to this goes back to the book that we've been reading for Weelunk Reads called Educated by Tara Westover, which is a very place-based book. A lot of what happens in that has to do with where it takes place. And so we want all of you to reflect on where you're from. And it could be that, like Laura, obviously she's from Weelung, but this place, Piedmont, is as much where she's from as Weelung is. Where are you from? We want you to tell us.
And it's important to remember that don't overthink this. This is not your PhD dissertation. Plug in what comes to mind, and often what comes to mind initially is what's truly in your heart. And it doesn't have to sound like ours, and it doesn't have to sound like George Ella Lyons. Go with it. Christina, maybe you'd mention the Weelung Country Day School students who did it. They had a phenomenal time with this.
They did. So I think, was it 5th grade?
4th, 5th, 4th. I can't remember.
One of those grades. They really, those kids really latched on to this concept because their teacher was teaching it in class and just ran with it and wrote some really insightful, incredible poems about here, where we're from. And I think that sometimes we need children and their views and their eyes to really help us appreciate where we're from and all the richness. I mean, there's no other place I'd like to be than Weelung in the summer. It's green and it's lush and it's beautiful, and there's Ogilvy and Weelung Park and all those wonderful things. So I hope that you will contribute. We do have a form. So say you're working on your poem and you're like, I don't know where to start. You can share a form and plug in some things there. So if you want to check it out, the address is on the screen here in this box.
Yeah, you can plug it in, or you can take off with it and do an entirely unusual form. And we are going to be taking a look at them. And what do we have for the ones we choose? How are we doing this? Are we doing a monthly? Sean, you want to?
I think we're going to feature. I think that we're going to feature our monthly selections by video on the Ohio County Public Library website and some other places. And then at the end, when it's time for the Festival of Books, Sean says yes.
Thank you.
We will then sort of choose some overall winners, and we have some special prizes from local businesses for those people.
Yeah. So we hope you'll participate. It's a lot of fun, and take your time and write what's in your heart. You know, we all have one of these places.
Yes.
We do.
Yeah.
So.
And since we've been quarantined, where you're from and that place has become even more important than ever.
It's true. It's true. It's certainly made you rethink the idea of home.
Definitely.
Yeah. So
that we live with.
Write a poem. It is fun. It is fun.
It is fun to write poetry. So thank you everybody for joining us today. And we hope that if nothing else, we brought a smile to your face, or at least made you forget a little bit for a short time about all of the crazy things that are happening in our world right now. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Christina.
Sure.
Thank you, Sean.
Thanks, Sean.
Take care, everybody. Stay safe.
Thanks, Phyllis.
Thanks, Phyllis. Oh, does anybody have any questions? Were we supposed to ask? Does anybody have questions? I can't imagine they do. I can tell you how to hit a deer with a water balloon.
Of course.
Why did they only eat one hosta? Like there was a lime green one and a dark. That's my question. Why do they go for the one and not the one next to it?
Could be why my cats eat only the brown cat food and leave the orange cat food in their bowl.
I don't understand animals at all.
I don't either. Being an animal.
Well, I guess
it's reasonable.
It's true. All right. Well, I guess that does it for us. So everybody have a good Wednesday. Stay healthy.
Yes, we're halfway through the week. That's always good.
All righty.
See you.
Thanks, everybody.